Ready to go? Yeah. OK. So today we're going to talk about internals of deploying the in-place archive. Who thought up that title? The actual presentation is nothing about that. OK. So my name is Bharat Suneja. I am a senior technical writer in the Exchange IT Pro team. I take care of compliance, which includes all your wonderful, very interesting topics like retention, archiving, e-discovery, preservation and hold, DLP, and so on.
And my name is Deepak. I'm a program manager in the archiving team of Exchange. Nice to meet you all.
So any kudos for the documentation, excellent documentation that we write, go to me. Any of the complaints you have for the features, go to him. So let's be very clear from the outset. Things that are not working are his fault. Is this mouse?
That's over there.
OK. So session objectives, we're going to talk about, we're going to get an overview of Exchange Online archiving and how wonderful it is and how much money it's going to save you. We're going to go through setup and deployment of EOA, understand how the management experience is, not very different from what you see on premises. And we're going to take a look at some of the compliance features in EOA, how they work on premises and in the cloud. So let's get started. What do we want to do with compliance or archiving in the cloud? One of the first things people think about is storage. When I'm storing years and years worth of email, typically people accumulate email on an average about 3.5 to 5 gigs a year. Your mileage may vary. And if you're required to hold email for any number of years, depending upon what's your area of operation, which industry you're in. Some do it 3 years, some do it 7 years, 10 years. Some never delete any email. So we're looking at huge mailboxes and a lot of storage costs. A lot of costs to make sure that that data does not go away before it needs to. Immutability is another concern. When I'm archiving stuff, and you get into this mode with third-party archiving, is I am typically used to taking data out of Exchange, putting it in a third-party archive. And I think of that as archiving. It's kind of a lockbox. Nobody can tamper with it, right? That's immutability. I should be able to prove that nobody was able to tamper with this data. We'll see how we achieve that with Exchange as well. Data governance. So email has, like all information, it has a life cycle. And you want to be able to say, hey, if I'm required to maintain my email till 7 years, I'm only keeping it till 7 years, and after that, I'm expiring it. And to be able to do that in a consistent fashion. And finally, why are we doing all this? Is for e-discovery. Now, not everybody gets e-discovery requests, so it just may be a business requirement. But for a lot of companies today, e-discovery requests are part of the doing business, so we need to comply. And when you get these requests, you should be able to produce that data quickly and efficiently at a low cost. And we'll go to take a look at some of that. So just a repetition of what I said. Storage management, lower storage costs, given all the large mailboxes, meet our data retention requirements, meet our e-discovery requirements when we get, and importantly, reduce the cost of e-discovery. If you've attended other presentations, you probably heard the number thrown around. For lawyers to do an review e-discovery data, it costs about $10,000 a gig. So the more data you have, the more it's going to cost you to review that data. What did we do before archiving in Exchange? we use journaling with a third-party archiving system, which is what most of you said you have. And what does journaling do? Journaling is an Exchange feature. It runs on transport servers as a transport agent. It captures mail that goes through the transport server. Okay? And it generates what is called a journal report. The journal report contains the original message, and it contains metadata. The metadata includes the sender, the recipient, all the stuff that is in the message, plus things like expanded distribution group list, which actually shows who were all the people who received this message. So that was before we had archiving in place. Going back for a second here, one of the issues with journaling, of course, was it only captured what went through your transport servers, meaning it's not capturing things that are in the mailbox, things like I created an appointment or a meeting that did not go through transport, things like notes. All those things will not go to the transport or not getting journaled. So you're not capturing everything. Is that the right slide? I think we skipped a slide here. Okay. So now we're moving to a time where we started doing in-place archiving. Now what in-place archiving lets you do is basically maintain your data in place. Users are used to having PST files, which we want to suck up and bring back into Exchange. Think of them as online PSTs, if you will, because that's how they're going to look to your mailbox. The mailbox user, therefore, has a very consistent, seamless experience. They can drag and drop mail between their primary and their archive. They can do inbox rules, just like they do with your normal mailbox. How does this differ from third-party archiving systems? What are they doing? They're creating stubs, sucking the data out in another database, leaving behind stubs, saying, hey, if you check this email, it's actually in that database. So if you're using Outlook, you're required to deploy an Outlook plugin. Items in the archive will not show up in Outlook web app. In-place archiving gives the user this experience where it's all in place, whether it's in the primary mailbox or the archive mailbox. It shows up in both Outlook and Outlook web app. So the other thing is the archive retains the folder hierarchy. When messages are moved from the primary mailbox to the archive, the same folder hierarchy is created in the archive mailbox. So it's easier to find messages. The ability to search. So with large mailboxes and even larger archives, now in Exchange 2013 and Exchange Online, when you search for a message, it basically spans your primary mailbox and the archive. Seamless experience. The other important thing is conversations. We introduced conversations back in, I think, 2010.
In Outlook.
In Outlook, yes.
Yeah.
And conversations, of course, collapse messages into a single conversation. Now when you go and access a conversation, one message may be sitting in the archive, but the user will see a single thread. So a much more seamless experience. So you search entire mailbox plus archive, or you can just search the primary mailbox if you'd like. And it's the same experience in Outlook and Outlook web app. The admin experience. So let's talk about third-party archiving systems. When you deploy this, you're basically deploying a database. You're deploying a third-party system. It has its own management tools. You need to be able to learn. You need to be able to train your users how to live with that experience. With in-place archiving, you have the similar archive experience as your primary mailbox because you're using the same tools. There's no third tool to learn. It's the Exchange admin console, or if you're command line savvy, you can use PowerShell. and you can manage your archive just like you manage your primary mailboxes. All other considerations remain the same. So things like high availability, it's going to be the same for your primary mailbox and the archive. So if you have a 3-member DAG for your primary mailboxes, you can locate the archive also in that same DAG, or you can have an archive in another database in another DAG if you would want. But essentially, there is no difference in planning. There is no difference in deploying that archive. So much lower, actually non-existent learning curve because of how simple it is. So we started with on-premises archive, where in Exchange 2010, you created an archive. It used to be on the same mailbox database as your primary mailbox. Then in SP1, we went and changed it and allowed you to have a mailbox database for your primary, and you could have the archive on another mailbox database. And the reason is because you asked us that, hey, I want sans expensive storage for my primary because it's faster, more performance, right? But for the archive, I don't care so much. I want to deploy it on less expensive drives and storage, right? So now you can move your archive to another database on the same server or another server. In addition, if you're in the cloud, of course, you can do a cloud-only primary and archive. You do not have Exchange on premises. Or you can go with a hybrid deployment where some users are on premises, both with their primary and their archive. Some users are in the cloud with both primary and archive. What Exchange Online Archiving allows you to do is have your primary on premises and your archive in the cloud. Okay? It's kind of hybrid, but you're still maintaining your primary mailbox on premises. So an overview of what it is, it's a per-user setting, so it's not an all-or-nothing deal. You can have some mailboxes, both primary and archive, on premises. You can have some of them in cloud, but some users, you can say, I want to use EOA, per-user setting. Huge benefit is unlimited storage. So bring me your 25, your 50, your 100 gig mailbox users, and I'm going to store their mail in the cloud, and I'm going to give you unlimited storage to do that. How cool is that? Seamless compliance. So the same retention, move and delete policies that you use on premises are going to work in the cloud. The same data preservation that is in place hold or litigation hold is going to work in the cloud using the same tools. So there's really nothing else to do. E-discovery is going to work seamlessly from your primary to the archive. You're going to be able to create an e-discovery search and search both of them. Auditing of admin actions is going to work seamlessly. And all management is from on-premises tools. So really low learning curve. How do I get, yes?
Are you talking Exchange 2010 as well as 2013? Or just Exchange 2010?
No, Exchange Online Archiving can be used with both Exchange 2010, and I have more information on that, but it's for both Exchange 2010 on premises as well as Exchange 23 on premises. Both can use Exchange Online Archiving. So how do I get Exchange Online Archiving? There are two ways to get it. For on-premises customers, you can go and buy the standalone Exchange Online Archiving plan. It's only less than a Starbucks coffee a month. Right? Think of it that way. So for the price of less than a Starbucks coffee, you're getting unlimited archiving for that user in the cloud. How cool is that, really? Okay? Now, you can also, if you all have Enterprise Cal with services, you don't even have to pay that. It's included in your Enterprise Cal with services. If you have Exchange Online plans with no archiving, you can add it. Okay? It's going to save you a lot of money. That's one of the big drivers. So let's see how we configure EOA. The requirements are your mailboxes need to be, the on-premises mailboxes need to be Exchange 2010 SP2 or later. It's going to require hybrid configuration. We're going to not go through the entire hybrid configuration step. There was a previous session, OUC B311 on hybrid. There is a lot of documentation available on this online.
How many of you actually attended that session? Okay, good number.
Okay. If you are on Exchange 20, what is this? New Office Service. So yes, if you're going to Wave 15, which is what you'll be doing now, you're going to require one Exchange 2010 SP3 client access server. So I think if you're on 2010, you should already be on SP3 or planning to do so. So that's required for setting this up. Let's look at some of the other components. First of all, there is directory synchronization, which synchronizes selected attributes from your Active Directory related to all these users and going to sync it to Active Directory in your online tenant organization. So it's basically replicating it in the cloud. Then there is Active Directory Federation Services, which allows you to set up single sign-on so that users do not have to provide a password another time or use a different password, rather. You set up federation to be able to basically perform things like e-discovery, MRM, move mailboxes back and forth. And you're able to do all this in addition to, so that is, I think we are on the wrong slide again. No. Okay, sorry about that. So ADFS for single sign-on, you set up federation, and that's all you need to do. The steps that you do not need to do in a hybrid topology that you would normally do is set up mail routing. So you're not required to route your inbound or outbound mail through Exchange Online. All that still occurs in your on-premises organization. So how many of you have used EDA or know about the tool? Okay. Exchange Deployment Assistant is a very easy to use web-based tool. It's a website you can go to. The URL for this is aka.ms, that's the short URL, /EDA 2013. Will bring you up the Exchange 2013 version of the Deployment Assistant. You go to this EDA, you select hybrid configuration, and it's going to ask you questions about your existing environment, whether you're on Exchange 2010 or 2013, and what do you want to do. And based on how you answer, it's going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to set up a hybrid environment. So if you haven't checked out the EDA, I'd recommend doing so. It's a very popular tool, along with another tool that we'll take a look at. Some of the steps that the EDA will walk you through is first, sign up for your Office 365 or Exchange Online archiving account. You register your domains in the O365 portal. You have to provide proof of ownership as part of doing this, which is done through a DNS entry. You configure single sign-on, which is ADFS. Configure DIRSync. Now, one of the intricacies of, or one of the differences rather, of EOA is you configure DIRSync write back. When you provision, it needs to be able to come back and write to your Active Directory, and it only is allowed to write a specific set of attributes. In addition, you're required to install the hotfix. The KBA is on the slide, KB 982867. A lot of customers forget to do that, so it's important to remember to do that. Now, Exchange Server 2010 SP2 mailbox servers, SP2 or later, you'll also require to publish auto-discover. You need to have a working auto-discover configuration. And if you want to test this, the tool to use is, anybody? Yes, the XRCA, or Remote Connectivity Analyzer, used to be the Exchange Remote Connectivity Analyzer. It's now called the Microsoft Remote Connectivity Analyzer, because not only does it let you do Exchange connectivity tests, it also lets you now do Lync. It lets you do Office 365, and it also lets you now do SMTP testing. So things like if you just want to test your MX records from outside, if you want to test my inbound email is working, if you want to test mail delays and so on, it's an excellent tool to check out. So run the hybrid wizard after you publish Auto-Discover successfully if you don't already have. And finally, this is a new step for 2013. You're going to have to configure OAuth authentication between your on-premises and your cloud-based organization. And the reason you do that is for e-discovery to work seamlessly between on-premises and in the cloud. In Exchange 2013 and SharePoint 2013, SharePoint can do e-discovery on Exchange. That also requires OAuth authentication. So if you've already done that, you'll be very familiar with this process, but let's take a look at what it's going to look like. On your on-premises server, you're going to go ahead and use new auth server command to introduce your Office 365 authentication infrastructure to your on-premises. Then you're going to export the certificate using get auth config from your on-premises server. Now, you take the certificate because we want to make sure this is secure communication. We take the certificate from your on-premises deployment and we export it to the cloud. So the command to do that is on the next screen. And this is not documented yet, so you'll have it on your slides. So you start remote PowerShell as a tenant admin, connect to your O365 account, and once you've done that, take the certificate that you exported from your on-premises and import it into your Exchange Online.
Someone really dying to get in here.
Okay. Any questions about this part, the OAuth part?
The cert you're talking about, is it the same cert you're going to use like an OAuth? Is that a different cert?
No, it's a different cert that is installed when you install Exchange. Yeah. Here's the one. Okay, so once you perform this OAuth authentication, which lets you do e-discovery seamlessly from your on-premises to your cloud, your configuration is complete. The only step that you're missing if you do not do this is e-discovery is not going to work cross-premises. But all normal functionality will continue to work. So rapid provisioning. Because you're using the same tools, the Exchange Administration Center if you're on 2013, or EMC if you're on 2010, you're going to use to create your cloud-based archive. So very rapid provisioning, whether you're on-premises or in the cloud or in a hybrid deployment using the same tools. So enable or modify quickly from the EAC user properties. Create a remote archive. So what it shows you basically is that screen overlaid over EAC. I don't know why we did that, but I think we wanted to show you how it's going to look in the EMC if you're still on 2010. So the checkbox at the bottom, at the top, it says create a local archive. You can create a local archive mailbox using that. Or it says create a remote hosted archive, which should actually say cloud-based archive. We missed that, didn't we? Okay.
I'll show that in the demo.
Okay. So create a remote archive for an Exchange Server 2010 mailbox. In 2013, that same thing is going to look, because it's web-based. It's a little bit cleaner, nicer. I think I like the look of this. So you just say, create a cloud archive in your online organization. Now, some interesting things happen in the background when you're doing this. So let's take a look at some of that.
We jump straight into the demo.
We jump straight into the demo.
All right. Let me switch up to a different machine. Can everyone see that? Perfect. So what I have over here, this is my on-premises Exchange installation. So I've got Exchange 2013, Contoso 106. I've got all my recipients, all my mailboxes here on premises. And if you see, some of my mailboxes are in my Office 365 tenant. So as Bharat mentioned before, you have to create your own special Office 365 tenant and then run all the hybrid configuration so you have the relationships set up between them. But everything, all your management, all your compliance is effectively done from your on-premises installation. So I'm in my 2013 ECP. I've got a bunch of users here. Now let me go and show you, a really simple, archive creation experience. So let's say I want to pick Peter Waxman, right? So for Peter, he does not have an archive today. So if you see, archiving is disabled. Now if I want to enable a local archive, all I need to do is go here, click enable, and say create the on-premises archive. If I hit browse, it's going to show me the databases that are available, and I pick the database, and simple as that, the archive gets created in a matter of seconds. Now, how is it going to work if I want to create a remote archive for this same user? All I need to do is, make this one change, cloud-based archive, Contoso. Again, this depends on the fact that you have actually published your auto-discover.
Yeah, you've set up the hybrid configuration before doing this.
Right? So hit that, and that's it. So simple as that, the guy just got a cloud-based archive. Just really as simple as that. Now, how do you test this? So the first thing you need to remember is DirSync takes some time to run. So there's two things that happen. The first one is we're going to first send out information to the cloud tenant saying, hey, provision archive for this particular user. And once that archive gets created, those details of that archive mailbox is sent back to the on-premises tenant, right? There's a couple of nuances over here. The first one is your archive mailbox, as we keep saying, is an in-place archive. What does that mean? It means we do not make copies. When an item is past the date that you set to be archived, it just gets moved into the archive mailbox. Now, it doesn't do this through transport. It actually does this through the Managed Folder Assistant. How many of you know what the Managed Folder Assistant is? So the Managed Folder Assistant is simply a scheduled job. I keep using the word scheduled, but it's actually...
It's a throttled process
now, so
it's always on.
Right, and especially in 2013. In 2010, yes. I think it is scheduled.
2010, it used to be scheduled. You could change the schedule, but 2013, we made it a throttle process. It's always on because compliance needs to be always on.
So the job of the Managed Folder Assistant is really simple. It looks at an item, sees if it's past its expiration date. If it is, it deletes it. Yeah, quick question.
If you have an on-premise archive first and you move to a cloud one, does it migrate that data?
So you can. So it's I'll try to show you that as well. Demo God's willing. So if you do have an on-premises archive, so I've got one for, I think, Yan Lee over here. And what I can do is migrate that archive mailbox to the cloud. And that's going to move all the items in the on-premise archive back into the cloud. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you do that with 2010 as well? Or
Both 2010 as well as 2013. It's basically a move mailbox. You're moving your archive mailbox to the cloud. So you can suck up all your data if you have in PSTs, bring it to your on-premises, either primary or archive, and then move the archive mailbox to the cloud. Or you can have the Managed Folder Assistant move it automatically to the cloud.
Cloud for you. Yeah.
Yes.
so if you already have policies in place and items that are already on retention and or legal hold, does all of that get translated as well?
Yep.
Very good question. We're going to cover that.
Yep. The answer is yes.
Yeah,
so you don't
the
have to
answer
do
is yes.
anything special whatsoever. So for Peter, I don't know where that went. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I just enabled a cloud archive, right? So now let me see here. So this is my Exchange shell in my on-premises installation. So I am going to look at Peter's mailbox. So I see get mailbox, Peter W, and look for his archive parameters. So you see there, it says archive domain, Contoso 106, and it says the archive state is hosted pending. Means we know that it's going to go there into the cloud. Now, if I show you Jan's email, it's going to look slightly different because I just provisioned Jan's archive before this presentation, and I made it a local archive. So if you see here, it says archive state local. So really simple, really straightforward. That's all you need to do. Now, I'm going to go into my tenant over here. So this is a remote PowerShell session into the cloud tenant. Now, when Bharat talked about setting up DirSync, for every user in your organization, when you set up DirSync, every mailbox that you have in your organization on premises, you get a cloud mail-enabled user in the Office 365 tenant. So that's how you associate your primary on-premises and the archive in the cloud, because the archive mailbox is actually connected to a mail-enabled user.
It's a typical cross-forest topology. If you've ever deployed Exchange in multiple forests, you have mailbox users in one org, and you have a mail user object created for them in the forest with exchanges. So it's kind of similar to that.
And if you want to check the status of the archive mailbox, you cannot do a get mailbox in your Office 365 tenant simply because it's not a primary mailbox. It's associated to the mail user, and all the archive properties are associated with the mail user.
So you do a get mail user instead of get mailbox when you go to your tenant PowerShell.
So let's look at this guy. So I just provisioned an archive for Peter W. Let's see what that looks like. It still hasn't come through. So typically it depends on how your DirSync runs. So we've got a neat trick here. Forgive me for doing this. I might have to come back and take some time. But so this is where my DirSync is, and I'm going to force DirSync to do something. So I'm going to say start online coexistence sync. Now what this is going to do is push the details of that archive creation into the cloud tenant. And give me a couple of minutes. I think Bharat can continue talking while I wait for DirSync to do its work.
Okay. So you saw archive creation. I use my on-premises tools to be able to create that archive in the cloud. And what's going to happen behind the scenes is something we will take a look at here while it's actually happening behind the scenes. So you create that archive on your Exchange server on-premises. Okay. First thing to remember is provisioning is asynchronous. It's not going to be as quick as you do it in your on-premises, though he showed you how to do that really quickly if you wanted to by kicking off the DirSync manually. So what's happening behind the scenes is you do, whether you use EAC or you use the shell, it's basically going to run a PowerShell commandlet in the background, enable mailbox user 1, and it's using the parameter -remote archive. That's something you wouldn't use if your archive was going to be local, right? You're just going to say which database to create it on. But because this is remote, you see the remote archive. Now, when you create this, of course, everybody knows the configuration is stored in Active Directory, so it writes that information to Active Directory. DirSync takes it from there and replicates it to the cloud, which is what was happening. And he said it's going to take a few hours. If you don't do it that way, you have to kick it off manually if you really want to see your archive quickly. Now, it synchronizes the directory. It writes into Exchange, goes ahead and creates the archive in the cloud, writes that information to Active Directory in the cloud, which again pushes the creation information, which is the GUID of the archive and other information, and sends it back to your on-premises. And that is why you needed to allow it to write back to your Active Directory. And it's just writing a couple of attributes. So it writes this back to your Active Directory through DirSync. And then when you go into Exchange and you say get mailbox, or you check it in EAC, it's basically going to show you that the archive is created. What's the typical time it will take if you don't kick off the DIR-sync manually?
6 hours.
It could take up to 6 hours. It doesn't always take 6 hours. I think the average is, what, 2 to 3 hours? About that. But it could take as long as 6 hours. And we showed you how to do that manually. Now, how do you manage this archive once it's created? Again, it's all the stuff that you learn to manage your mailboxes. That doesn't change. So you can create a cloud-based archive for a new mailbox. You can enable the archive for an existing mailbox. You can move an on-premises archive to the cloud. If you're on Exchange 2010, it's shell only, but Deepak just told me you can do it on EAC now.
You can do it on EAC from the cloud tenant, actually.
Right. Now, move a cloud-based archive back to on-premises. So it's just like moving a mailbox. On-premises to the cloud, and if you're not really satisfied, I hope you're not, but if you're not, you can move it back to your on-premises. How cool is that?
Right, I'm going to jump in because it worked.
It worked, okay.
All right. So now, let me first show you guys what it looks like in the cloud tenant. So I've got my mail user, Peter W., that I just created an archive for. So if you look at what I did before, this part over here, it said, nothing's happened. It doesn't have an archive right now. The archive status is none. But then once I kicked off DIR-sync, what it did was went and created an in-place archive, gave it 100 gig because that's your default, gave it a database in your North America data center, and put the status to active. Now, what I also did was go and hit the online sync again so that the write back happened. Now, if you look at my on-premise, shell, all this time it was hosted pending, right here. You see, it was none, the status was none, it was hosted pending, but just now, came back, all good. Let me show you one more time. There you go, active and hosted provision. So, as simple as that, creating an archive in the cloud.
So once this write back happens, that's when EAC and shell both are going to show you that the archive has been successfully provisioned. That's when user can log in using Outlook 2007 or later and Outlook web app and be able to see the archive.
So now I'll also show you what the end user experience looks like. So if you remember for Jan Lee, I had actually created an archive mailbox on premises. Same thing, you've got your in-place archive, you click that, it's going to go and find the archive and open it. Right now I don't have item. Actually I do. Looks like the manage folder assistant kicked in, moved the items to the archive. So there you go, that's how it actually works. The manage folder assistant, what it does is it takes the items from your primary mailbox and moves it to the archive mailbox based on the retention tag, the move to archive action of the retention tag. So I had 42 items in my primary mailbox, and if I go here and see the policy, there you go. So it's got an archive policy. This is really cool too, because in OWA 2013, we've introduced, we've made it really simple to, differentiate between the archive policy and the deletion policy. So I have an archive policy here right now. I don't know what the policy is. I'll go look at it and let you know. But what it's effectively done is take the items from the primary mailbox and moved it into the archive mailbox. Think of it as an overflow container. We do not make copies. There's only one instance of it, and that just gets overflown into the archive. So now, what it's going to look like for Peter? Let me sign out and log in as Peter over here. If you see OWA, again, I'm connecting to the on-premises OWA. I'm not connecting to the cloud. So Peter W. Proof that I'm doing this for the first time.
First time mailbox logon. But what's magical is the MFA was able to move items from your on-premises primary mailbox to the cloud. And what's good to remember is it's not using SMTP to do that. When you went and configured hybrid, it's basically using the, what's it called, MRS proxy. the same service that moves mailboxes in your on-premises, it uses that to transfer messages that have gone past your archiving policy and moved those items to the cloud-based archive.
So while I wait for the archive to log in, there you go. So simple as that. The user just sees an archive mailbox just like he sees the archive mailbox that is available for him on premises. It just looks exactly like that. You get all the great features in Outlook and OVA that you get with your primary mailbox items. So what I'm going to do now is, so I'm pretty sure this guy does not have a policy. So there you go. I don't see the assign policy on his mailbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a retention tag, a retention policy on this particular user. So the way I do that, once again, I go into my primary, your on-premises installation. I go into Peter's mailbox. Give me 1 sec while I find that. Open that up. Go into mailbox features and assign the archive and retention policy. Hit save. So now that's going to go and apply the retention policy. Now another trick, and this is useful for demos especially, is if you want to actually go and kick off the manage folder assistant, you can force the manage folder assistant by doing start manage folder assistant.
Against a particular mailbox.
Yep.
So if you were in 2007, it lets you start for everybody by just saying start manage folder assistant. Now that it's always on in 2010 and later, you don't have to start the MFA for everybody. But you can kick it off against an individual user by using this command, start manage folder assistant.
So I just kicked it off. It's going to get queued. It will probably take a minute or two to kick in, so I'll again just switch to Bharat.
Okay. So disclaimer here, he showed you in demo what I was going to talk about. Some of it is now not going to be an intro anymore since you already saw that, but I'll go over one more time. So you were able to create, enable, move an on-premises to the cloud, move it back to the cloud. You can disable the archive. What happens when you disable the archive? The archive is sitting in the cloud. It is going to stay there for the default period of 30 days. Now, that is your only chance to recover that data if you want to. Otherwise, if you disable that archive after 30 days, it is gone forever. Okay? On premises, your deleted mailbox configuration does the same thing, but you have a little bit more control in your on-premises. Once it moves to the cloud, you need to be careful about disabling the archive. And you can reconnect. Within that 30 days, if you want, you can go ahead and reconnect the archive to that user. No, you cannot do a different user. It's going to go back to the same user. Reconnect or disable the archive. Okay. The attributes that he showed you, in-place archive properties, there is the archive database, archive domain, which is your remote domain for your online tenant. The archive GUID identifies the archive mailbox. So it keeps on moving between different servers. Now we identify mailboxes using GUIDs. And the archive status says whether it was, provisioning pending or provisioned successfully or the user does not have an archive.
You want me to jump in? Looks like
Sure.
It's done its work. All right. So now I'm back in Peter's mailbox. And if you see, I had 43 items in Peter's primary mailbox, right? Now all of those items got moved to the archive, and a folder called inbox was created because there was nothing before. And there you go. All the items there, no transport, no SMTP, just the manage folder assistant, took the items, moved it there. Really simple and really straightforward.
Great. So how do you like what you've seen so far? Think it's something you can use? Okay.
Thank you.
Unlimited storage, $3. Okay. Are we back to the presentation?
Yes. You want me to show the moving archive thing?
You can show it.
Yeah.
He said he wouldn't.
Well, everything's working. I'm just going to ride that wave.
It's our lucky day, Last year I tried to show this in, where was it, Orlando and Amsterdam, and both times it failed. So
there you go.
that demo did not go well. So Deepak can help us out here.
See, it doesn't always work. That's the problem. So let me see if I have a login.
It's just that we haven't probably done it enough number of times to do it as effortlessly. But the good news is you're not limited to PowerShell commandlets to move the archive to the cloud anymore. In 2013, you can do it from within EAC.
So right now, I am in my cloud tenant. I'm logged in as the administrator, and I go into migration. And this is how you schedule your migrations. So while this pulls up the list of previous migrations, there you go. So you create a new migration. So you say migrate to Exchange Online.
So remember, this is an on-premises archive, but to move it, you have to go to the cloud and kick off a migration from there. And you can select just to move the archive, not the primary mailbox.
So there you go. Now you get a remote move migration because it is from your from your on-premises to the cloud. I hit next. As I mentioned before, Jan Lee has an archive that is on-premises. So it's going to pull up my list of users there. I'll just go select Jan, add, say OK, hit next. And it's going to ask me my MRS endpoint. I guess that's already pre-populated, so I hit next again. Goes, verifies it. And it's going to be happy with it. It's going to move on to the next one, or it's going to error out on me, and there ends my luck. Oh, what? Awesome. So now we have a batch name. So TechEd 2013 archive move. There you go. And if you see this, I can either move both the primary and the archive, or I can say I want to move just the archive mailbox. So as simple as that, to move just the archive mailbox from on-premises to the cloud. I'm not going to hit next because I don't want this luck to run out on me, but go for it.
Yeah.
If you do both the primary and the archive, does it wait to prompt the user until both have been moved, or does it do one and then wait for the other?
That's a good question. I do not know the answer because I'm not from the MRS team, but I can definitely find out and let you know. Yep. So I'll switch over to you, Bharat.
OK. So he's just going on showing you everything that I was going to talk about.
Steal his thunder.
OK. So EOA, Outlook Access, how that works. You already saw OA, but let's take a look at Outlook Access. The Outlook user is configured to go to your on-premises using Autodiscover. He's going to get back the Autodiscover XML file back. The XML tells it, hey, your primary mailbox is here on-premises, but your archive is in the cloud. OK? So he goes to the cloud directly and gets his archive. So now he's accessing primary on-premises, and he's accessing his archive in the cloud at the same time. Again, pretty seamless. Outlook Anywhere at work here. And Autodiscover. How many of you have heard the Autodiscover song? That was a joke. We'll talk about it if you need to know more. OK. Diagnosing Outlook Autodiscovery. So what happens if the archive doesn't work? Well, Outlook has an option, and instructions are on the screen. You can basically go and say test email configuration when you see that Outlook icon in the taskbar. And when you do that, it spits out the auto-discover information that it has received. If you look at the screen, it shows the alternate mailbox, which is that segment about archive mailboxes. And it basically gives address and GUID of the cloud mailbox. So that's how Outlook is getting that information. If you don't see that, that means your auto-discover is not working correctly and not pointing to the archive in the cloud. Also, I'm going to break here, if you don't mind, and I'm going to show you a new tool that we just released, I think, was it yesterday or this morning?
Let me log in for you.
So I'm just going to quickly, because we're talking about that, I wanted to show you this. We go to the Exchange team blog, aka.ms/ehlo, and let me just grab a link from there. It's called the Outlook Connectivity to Office 365 Troubleshooter. Okay. Let's take a quick look at what this tool does. And all the stuff that I talked about, DirSync working or not, ADFS working or not, and so on, is going to ask you these simple questions and walk you through troubleshooting. So cannot open archive in Outlook. Okay. So it gives you supported deployment scenarios for the archive. One of them is primary on-premises mailbox with a cloud-based archive mailbox. Okay, it's going to give you details about what kind of licensing is required for the client. It's Outlook 2007 or later. You need a Pro Plus license. The URL for licensing for all Outlook versions is provided. And Outlook Web App works just simply. Let's take a look. This does not resolve my problem. Open archive in Outlook. So it talks about the DirSync time, that it may take up to 6 hours for DirSync to write it back. And we showed you how to manually kick it off. Okay, does that resolve your problem? No. Are you using the correct version and SKU of the Outlook client? So again, thing to remember, Outlook 2007 or later, and it needs to be the Pro Plus. Open archive in Outlook. So is write back configured, the DirSync write back that we talked about? And it shows you how to go ahead and do that if it's not. Now can you open it? No. Is the organization relationship configured correctly? That's part of your hybrid setup. Okay. And you can get to this link from the blog. I'm just going to quickly go through the questions. Ensure all domain names are specified in the organization relationship. Remember, we said enter your domains here when you sign up for Office 365. Prove your domain ownership, so all that needs to work. Okay, now if you still have intermittent Outlook connectivity, you repair your Outlook profile, okay? And if that does not work, then you call us. So we've gone through all the things that you could have checked before you call us, and this helps you troubleshoot some of this connectivity issues if they're not working out for you. Okay, so we diagnose Outlook auto-discovery if it doesn't work. So that's how Outlook works. Auto-discover gives the address of the cloud archive. Let's see how OWA worked in his case. He already showed you. OWA works by going to your on-premises CAS server. So nothing changes for the user. They don't even need to know that their archiving is sitting in the cloud. Now, OWA basically goes and proxies that data from the cloud, brings it back, and gives it to the user. So very transparent for OWA. So he's getting primary from here, but he's also getting the archive mailbox proxied through your on-premises client access server. No change in how your users are going to work. Seamless user experience, we already saw that, so I'm just going to brush over that. Surge faster. That's a duplicate slide, isn't it? Okay, now the reason why we do this, you've probably heard about this if you've been in previous sessions. We're going to go through some of these things and how they work. In-place hold. So once you have this data in the cloud, also on-premises, now you can place holds on it. If you're going under litigation, in 2010, you could place a litigation hold, which holds all data indefinitely or until you remove the litigation hold. In 2013, you have an evolved version of that called in-place hold. And what in-place hold lets you do is A, let you emulate the litigation hold by placing an indefinite hold. So hold all items forever. Okay? But the cool part is it also lets you do a time-based hold. So now you can truly say, I want to retain my data for 7 years, and it's going to honor that using a time-based hold. And what's even cooler is a query-based hold, where some organizations, some customers came and said, we don't want to hold all of our data. We only want to hold data that meets these query parameters. So you can create a query for in-place hold and only hold that data. And the beautiful part is it works both on-premises And using that same hold, using that same DIRSing infrastructure, that hold information is transferred to the cloud, and your archive cloud archive is also placed on hold. Yes?
Can it be layered such that you have the time-based hold for all of your employees for 7 years, and then you want to do a query-based hold that extends that for another 3 years or something?
Absolutely. So the question is, can I do multiple holds per user to accommodate different scenarios? And the answer is yes. You can place all your users on hold for 7 years if you would like, and then you can say some users can be on hold for 10 years. And if one user has 2 holds, then the time for which you can, the largest time is basically how we will hold it for.
And the time-based hold can be all the time, like can be forever?
Yeah, so the indefinite hold is where you do not specify a time. It'll hold it forever, just like litigation hold.
I just want to hold email for 7 years for everybody, but all the time.
Yes, so that's what time-based hold does.
Again, but that makes you need to make sure that you have Exchange 2013 on premises, because 2010 does not have your
In-place hold.
Duration. Oh, the litigation hold duration also.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are the different variants of hold. Again, you use your on-premises Exchange Admin Center or the PowerShell, Exchange Management Shell, to do this on-premises. There is nothing to be done in the cloud. It just magically happens. Okay, how does hold work? So let's take a life cycle of mailbox items. And what's important to note here is when people talk about immutability. And this magical notion that I take this data out, put it in a third party or archiving, which is outside Exchange, and that is immutability. Or I put it on a DVD or worm drives, and that's immutability. Well, how does Exchange do this? So let's take a look. Items are in your mailbox, which is all the black stuff you see up there. That's what the user sees every day in Outlook or OWA. Okay? Once he deletes that item, it typically goes to delete items, or if you hit Shift Delete or empty your deleted items folder, then it goes into a hidden area known as the recoverable items folder. That's not visible to the user. Okay? It goes into the deletions folder. Now, that folder is visible to the user when he goes and says, recover deleted items. Okay? So the user can go and recover deleted items, but they can also permanently delete items from there if they wanted. So messages are moved to deleted items. Messages are deleted. They go to the deletions folder. Now, messages are purged by the user. So user goes to recover deleted items, deletes the message. He thinks it's permanently gone. But if the user is on hold, that message is simply hidden from the user's view. They don't know it exists, but it exists. So that's the idea of immutability here. The other thing is, messages purged by user, they go into discovery hold folder. So any message that the user tried to delete permanently. The other cool thing is this concept of immutability encompasses the mailbox itself. So when a user who is on hold, if he tries to edit an item, there is something called versioning. And we maintain versions of each item that the user or any process tried to make to the item. The original item is copied into the versions folder. So you have multiple copies if the item is edited multiple times. You have multiple copies there. Now, messages are purged based on the policy. So if your time-based hold kicks in, it's going to eventually purge the item based on your requirements. Now, yes?
Where is the storage for the time-based holds? So if we have a 25 gig mailbox, and we have a cloud-based mailbox, 25 gigs, and we extend cloud-based storage.
Yes.
With unlimited. If a user deletes, and we have a time-based hold for, let's say, 24 months, if a user deletes an item in their mailbox, that goes to the deleted item recovery in the mailbox.
Yes.
Is the storage hit here on their mailbox?
Let me give you an answer quickly. So first thing is the recoverable items exists in both primary mailbox as well as the archive, because archive is just another mailbox, right? So what's happening here is if you deleted it in your primary, it goes to the recoverable items folder in the primary. If you deleted it from the cloud-based archive, it's going to go to the recoverable items there. In your on-premises, the recoverable items folder has a different quota than your mailbox. So it's not counted against your mailbox quota. And there is a default move to archive policy for the recoverable items folder. So after 14 days by default, it's going to move all this stuff from your recoverable items on premises, move it to recoverable items in the cloud. So it's cleaning up. All these items, there's different versions or stuff that you're going to collect for 7 years, they're going to get moved to the recoverable items in the cloud.
So everything in the yellow after 14 days is...
Yes, by default moving to the cloud. And on-premises is the same thing. If you had archive on-premises, it's going to move it to the... And you can change that if you want, from 14 days, but there's really no reason to play with that. Okay?
Right.
Yes?
This one's kind of unrelated. Just the calendar logging one, is that what is now in 2010? What is it, the root of recoverable items is now actually in some folder?
Yeah, it's in the calendar logging folder. We also made some improvements to that. I think we blogged about it. Ross or Greg, right? So
Thanks for that, by the way.
okay, so if the mailbox is on single item recovery, which means don't, remove my items, let me recover them if the user tries to remove them within the deleted item recovery period, those are also held in the recoverable items folder. But hold encompasses everything. If the item is on hold, it's not going to be deleted. Yes?
The versions folder, is that used for any time a message is edited or something? Or is it only if he's on litigation hold?
It's only when he's on litigation hold.
Or single item recovery.
Yeah, any of those two scenarios.
The only difference is single item recovery is only going to retain it till deleted item retention period. That is when typically you would have allowed the user to recover a deleted item. Okay? Hold is something you control for litigation, either indefinitely or as long as your litigation is going to last. Or the typical retention scenario of 7 years, I want to hold all email, irrespective of whether the user deletes it or not. Okay, so that is our immutability story, and it's all held in place. It's all with the native metadata of the item. Nothing is going outside of Exchange. Now, rolling legal hold, I'm going to quickly go over this. If you have Exchange 2010, you do not have in-place hold, right? So how do you do that? I want to retain items for 7 years. You do it using rolling legal hold. It's a term. It's implemented using single item recovery. Basically, you're setting your single item recovery period to 7 years. Okay. The only difference, I think, is when you do that, items are retained based on their deletion date, not based on their receive date. Now, this is off by default on premises. So if you have Exchange 2010, you're going to have to enable single item recovery for that user. The command is on the screen. Set mailbox identity and just use the single item recovery enabled true. Now, data governance, again, he showed you the demo. I'm just going to quickly go over that. There is a default MRM policy in your organization. If you had Exchange 2010, it's called the default retention and archive policy. If you are on Exchange 2013, it's going to be called the default MRM policy. So when you enable an archive, the policy automatically gets applied to that user if they did not already have another policy applied. So the scenario is you have a mailbox, he doesn't have an archive, there is no policy applied. When you enable the archive, it's going to get the default policy. But if you use some other policy already, it's not going to override that. And the archive policy moves the items to the archive, in this case to the cloud. There is no end-user involvement required if I'm doing it based on a policy for the whole mailbox. But you can provision personal tags, which allow the user to tag individual folders and say, hey, I don't want this to move in 2 years. I want to move this in 3 years maybe, or 6 months. So it's an exemption to the policy. The delete policy is going to delete items. So when you combine these two, move in 2 years, it moves to the archive, and then delete in 7 years, okay? After 7 years, it's removed from the archive. So there's the delete policy and the archive policy. Let's take a look at what the user sees. The user in Outlook web app or in OA is going to see for each folder that it's supported on, it's going to see for items, so they can apply these tags to the item or the folder. A lot of granularity. They're not required to file items in folders just based on its retention or archiving properties. So again, user has a seamless experience, and it's not impacted. Single menu for policies. So on top, you see archive policies. At the bottom, you're seeing the retention policies, which delete items. Now, the scenario that we just talked about, that I want to guarantee that items are retained for a fixed period, like 7 years, wasn't possible in Exchange 2010. It is now possible in 2013, including in Exchange Online Archiving. If you have 2013 here on premises, you can set a time-based hold.
A quick note about this. So, and this is the scenario where we have, you're allowed to keep, you should keep your data only for a certain amount of time. So for those 7 years, yes, you will have to produce it no matter what. But when you have a policy and you say, hey, this is my 7-year policy, the second the 7 years are up, you need to get rid of it. So that's where you need to use a combination of your hold and MRM, and that helps you get the guaranteed retention and guaranteed deletion.
Good point. So the retention policy basically deletes item. Think of it as a destruction policy, if you will, right? And the in-place hold is a preservation thing. So if a user deletes it before the 7 years, the in-place hold is going to capture it. Okay, migrating retention policy. So once you set up your Exchange Online Archiving, one of the first things you need to do is migrate your retention policy to the cloud before you create a single archive mailbox. It's very simple. We ship two scripts which reside in your Exchange Server installation / scripts folder, export retention tags.ps1 and import retention tags.ps1. And no prizes for guessing. The first one is going to export to an XML file, and then you go to the cloud and you import that thing using import retention tags ps1. Now, another key point to remember is there is no synchronization after you do this. So every time you change your retention policy on premises, you're going to have to export it to XML and do this whole thing again to keep them in sync. Track changes. So audit admin actions. It works consistently across your on-premises and in the cloud. Any actions taken on the archive or litigation hold enabled or removed. Somebody performed e-discovery and search for messages across multiple mailboxes. All that is logged by default in the admin audit log. You can also get to reports, what's shown on the screen on the right. Very simple to use. It's all available in the EAC. You can also use PowerShell to do custom searches of the admin audit log. Only get the events you want. How do you configure auditing? Like we said, it's on by default. If it wasn't, you could do set admin audit config. Admin audit config enabled true. By default, it retains data for 90 days. You can go ahead and change that to the desired value you want. You can also search using the EAC or PowerShell commandlets, search admin audit log or new admin audit log search. The first one basically does single mailbox. The second one will send you the email, the whole report in an email. And finally, the reason we all do this is e-discovery. So if you have Exchange 2013 and you're using SharePoint on premises, you can use the new e-discovery center to be able to search across your SharePoint and your Exchange. And when you perform this search, it also includes your archive mailboxes. If they're on premises or if they're in the cloud, it's also going to search cross premises in the cloud and bring all that data back into your SharePoint search. If you do not have SharePoint, you can still use in-place e-discovery which is an Exchange 2013 feature, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to go ahead and search the primary mailbox on premises as well as your archive in the cloud. And then once you've done that search, you can export that data to a PST if you'd like, or you can copy that data to what's called a discovery mailbox and give it to your legal counsel if they're in-house, or typically people put it in a PST file and ship it to their lawyers to be reviewed. So both things are, yes?
Just exactly what you were just saying. What happens when you discover this amount of data?
Yes.
What's the next step? You're supposed to export it to PST, hand it off? Do they have a special console for the legal team so they can look at it? Or?
So there is a case management tool in SharePoint. But again, this is very specific to the organization. Different organizations have different ways of doing it. At least at Microsoft, the way we do it is we give access to the lawyers to the e-discovery console. Now, again, it's very dependent on how each customer does e-discovery.
The way it's designed, though, is you can delegate discovery management capabilities. So the user goes to ESE, and all they see is discovery. Okay? Makes it really easy for your legal folks to do discovery. And you're not assigning them any extra permissions. Okay? So like I said, once you're done, you either export the data or your legal person can export the data to a discovery mailbox or to a PST file. If you're doing it from SharePoint, you can also export the SharePoint documents, the web pages and lists and so on from SharePoint along with the Exchange PSTs. And it also generates an XML-based manifest that's compliant with EDRM.
Yeah, and the role is really important because, as he mentioned, you can give access to the discovery mailbox. He can log in and do searches inside that. He can see, yes, sir.
I'm just curious, is there a size limit to what can be exported? Because a PST at this point is about 20 gigs in size max, is it not?
Do you know, Sanjay?
Well, it is what is going to be the PST limit, yes.
So what happens in that case is that you switch it from one to the 18? So you can pick up every destination and then call up the
So you'll have multiple PSTs if you're exporting 100 gigs of data, but I hope you're not because it's going to cost you a lot of money to do that. What SharePoint and Exchange provide is tools to do this discovery, and if you've attended the other sessions, basically fine-tune discovery, bring your number of messages down to the most relevant because you don't want your lawyers to go through stuff that's not relevant to the case. That's what increases your cost.
So with the preview tool, you can actually go see which ones match your query. You can keep reducing your query or making your query bigger and bigger, fine-tune it. So at the end of the day, you're giving your lawyers very little stuff to review. And if you attended yesterday's session, I've got a few slides on how Microsoft does e-discovery. We've got some case studies. We'll be publishing a white paper as well. You can go through that. Tremendous cost savings for you, especially in an e-discovery scenario.
Great. So with that, I think that's just another screen that shows you added Exchange mailboxes and your SharePoint data sources to your e-discovery search, but that pretty much wraps up e-discovery. So thank you. To summarize, Exchange Online Archiving is archiving in the cloud for your on-premises mailboxes. It will automatically move data to the cloud-based archive, and it's going to save you a lot of money. That's what I want you to leave this room with. And it's going to allow you to seamlessly use the compliance features to help you comply with any regulations for retention of your data and to perform e-discovery. Now, I think we have time for some questions, but meanwhile, make sure you fill out the feedback form. And if you liked the session, I hope you did, give us some good feedback so we know you liked it.
And please go through the other sessions as well. Some really good information in there for you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Yes. So when you delete the user, it's going to hold it. It's just like any other deleted mailbox, right? What happens right now when you delete a mailbox, same thing happens with the archive. It goes into the deleted mailbox retention period of 30 days by default, and then it's going to purge it from the mailbox.
Not when it's on hold, though.
Not when it's on hold. If it's on hold, it will not let you delete. You'll get an error saying mailbox on hold.
You have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, what if I want to retain that? What if I want to retain that? What's the recommended method for doing that?
You should place the mailbox on hold. So if you place your primary mailbox on hold, it automatically places. The user.
If the user's deleted, I want to maintain that data.
You cannot today maintain data for a deleted user unless your deleted mailbox retention policy is, for as long as you want. And that's just going to bloat your mailbox stores a lot. In on-premises, what you do is you disable the user account, you remove it, group memberships, you disable all the permissions that they had, and so on. So there's pretty standard and scriptable processes that people follow for provisioning. And in on-premises, there is no license for disabled mailboxes. So that's one way to keep data around for longer.
And we are introducing a new feature in Office 365 and E15. It's called Inactive Mailbox. It's specifically targeted towards users who've left your organization. So you can take a look at that. Just go search for Inactive Mailbox, and it's a SKU that we've introduced in E15 and 365.
The URL is aka.ms/inactive mailbox. So in online world, of course, that for on-premises, today we do not require you to have a license for disabled mailboxes. But when you go to online, you're going to have to pay a monthly subscription, right, for the disabled mailboxes. Now with inactive mailboxes, you're not going to pay that.
It's free.
And you're going to store that unlimited data in the cloud for as long as you want and not pay anything. And do e-discovery on that. How cool is that? You just remove the license, and the mailbox becomes inactive. But caveat, for now, it's not supported in EOA.
Unfortunately.
It's only supported in completely online, so where your primary and archive is online. You can remove the license for that user.
Yes, ma'am.
User will not have access after you remove the license. Yeah, that's exactly why it's for. So. No. You can only re-enable that user's mailbox. And what you can do is export it to a PST and import it to the archive of the new user. I am not sure.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we don't. There are things that we can recommend, and there are things we're not allowed to. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. We'll take the feedback. I know a few customers have come and told us this, so we will take the feedback. We'll see what we can do. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. For delegates, it's all or nothing right now for the archive. So you provide full mailbox access, and they get primary and the archive. Yes. If you have Exchange 2013 CU1, then you can do it right from EAC.
You just provide the path and what permissions are required to create and access it.
It's only Discovery Management RBAC role has access to the Discovery Management console. So only those people can export PST from a discovery search.
Where does it create the PST?
The path that you specify. Just your normal file permissions, the ability to write, it's pretty documented in the PST export. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look for documentation on PST export, it includes that information on file permissions.
Yeah.
So we released a tool called, we didn't talk about that, PST Capture. And we recently released PST Capture 2. Okay? What PST Capture tool lets you do is suck up the PSTs from your users' computers because you allowed them in the past. Now, because you want to preserve it, and for rediscovery, not a good idea, you suck up those PSTs, bring up into your primary or archive mailboxes. The only caveat is, with the PST Capture tool, you cannot push it directly into the cloud-based archive if the primary mailbox is on premises. So it's not applicable to EOA. What you can do, though, is inject it into the primary mailbox, have the MFA move it to the cloud.
But if you have your primary in the cloud,
Then it'll work.
then you can use this tool
PST Capture 2, yes.
directly into the online archive.
Exactly.
And you can also, if you have it on premises, you can bring it to the on-premises archive and then move the on-premises archive to the cloud.
Right.
You can do that.
So multiple ways of doing this, of moving data to the archive or to the primary and then having MFA move it.
Yeah.
So are there also, I found the PST capture is not a lot of references to unsupported or not the greatest tool for alternatives.
Well,
Recommend, or I did hear, at least now, I can create an on-premise archive, import it into there, and then
move the archive mailbox, yes. So, I mean, there's third-party tools to do things, yes. But they'll let you do the PST search and then bring it into your on-premises. I don't know if there are tools that will directly let you inject it into the cloud as well.
There might be. There are lots of vendors downstairs who might be able to do that. I think you should check with them. It's a little bit of advertising, but
just to confirm what you said, the PST capture tool will allow you to inject directly into an online mailbox.
if your primary is also online.
Yes, it'll let you inject that. And we blogged about it when we released the tool. So if you follow the Exchange team blog, aka.ms/ehlo, there are, surprisingly, we don't want people in this room to not follow the Exchange team blog. Okay. And also Twitter. It's MSFT Exchange on Twitter.
Nothing useful there.
Yes. I am B. Suneja on Twitter.
Instagram photos brought. My
Yes. Okay, any more questions? Yes.
I got an E3 all of Wave 14, unfortunately yet.
Okay.
I've had litigation hold on for 7 years, so you said the managed folder system. I'm finding that it's not removing deleted items properly. So that will change with Wave 15, what you're saying. It'll be a constant.
I don't know what the particular scenario is in your situation. We might need some debugging to figure out why it's not deleting. Typically, we have one-day cycles in.
If you have a lot of deleted items and you've never run MFA before, then it's not going to finish the entire process because it's a throttle process. It may process some items, leave it the others for another cycle. Also, deleted items are processed a little bit differently. There's documentation on that. If you go to aka.ms/retention, there's a doc below that says how retention age is calculated. So take a look at that if you haven't.
So I'm more concerned because it's my CEO who's
Okay.
deleted items aren't disappearing
Okay.
on time. So, after 30 days, it's supposed to disappear. I tell her that, but I've got stuff that's actually showing up to a year.
Okay.
Okay.
So I've been pushing it for her, but I found that if I take litigation hold off, run the managed assistance, and turn it back on, it actually does that. But you don't want to do that either, right?
No, you don't want to do that.
Wave 15 will make that process better.
I think there might be some sort of an exception that's being thrown on your mailbox. I don't know if Wave 15 is actually going to make it better because the underlying infrastructure is still the same, although we've made a lot of improvements with the performance and with the exception handling. I'm guessing it's going to be better. But I think your scenario, I think we need to probably investigate it further. And if you have a ticket open, I'm pretty sure they're probably contacting somebody in the product team soon.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
You had one more question?
If you have more questions, we can handle it while we're leaving or downstairs in the booth.